Thank you very much for being here. I would like to talk about the organization I work for, SINNERGIAK, and I just wanted to show this on one slide. We've got three major interests: the social innovation and the creative activities and open activities, which are closely linked to governance. We are going to have mapping, social innovation mapping. We work with indicators and also with case studies. We do the same for the. We also have mapping, indicators, and cases for the open policies. We want to have to draw conclusions for the design of public policies. We have also the master, which is the part where we try to develop with this approach. We want to create a training space for the collaboration and the integration of the social innovation and creative center. We've got SINNERGIAK, which is and in social innovation, what we have been doing and what I'm going to talk about is how we have developed the system to measure the social innovation at regional scale, which is this Resindex, which is the regional social innovation index. It is a tool, which is a pilot project that has been carried out within Basque, and you've got the handbook, but I would like to note some elements that are not in those booklet, and some elements that are important for Resindex. There will be a more complicated part, and it's going to be of great interest because measuring is quite complex, so we have to talk about that. What is the problem with Resindex? We have difficulties when we have to measure the social innovation. There is no one sole approach and one unique definition. There are many, many definitions. So this might have an impact on the measurement of this index. So I'm not going to go deeper into these definitions because we have been talking about that, but there is not a unique and one and only system to measure this innovation. So the statistics that are available at a European level or national level, these are not social innovation statistics. These are simply statistics about social cohesion or different statistics, but they're not measuring particularly the social innovation. So we have undercover model. So we are not sure about what we are really measuring. So the idea of having indicators is to have a scenario to translate the scenario, and we're going to translate it into tangible factors and figures. So the indicators are not accurate. They are not corresponding to reality. They are a proxy of a definition. In the case of social innovation, our approach is that we need a change of approach. The innovation is seen as something that is closely linked to the social development and the role played by the NGOs in the creation of new processes for the social inclusion. So there is a sound tradition in this field. These are the characteristics of the social entrepreneurs. These are, as we see them as extraordinary people. They have a great will, many ideas, and they have a lot of strength to carry out and to develop an interesting project. So we talk about those people and those individuals. For me, there are incredible people, but I'm not one of those. But I think these persons are essential. But from a regional and a systemic perspective, we think that this is not enough to look closely at the NGOs or those people to understand that the social innovation as having an impact on the region. So we think that the systemic approach has a radical difference as regards what is presented by European Union, that systemic innovation. So it has been approaches in a different way. Our systemic approach presents different conditions. A new agency, there are no privileges on the related to the organization. Is not only for social companies or social organizations. There are more than one body, the university, the social organization, and the NGOs can participate. So from this viewpoint, there are no privileges. There is no one and only body. But to make social innovation, we have to go to have organization capacity, skills. So social innovation is an epistemic result, or the result of knowledge, and of the knowledge, it is the social articulation of both. So for us, it's very important to address the political connectivity, because these social phenomena are complex. They cannot be solved using only one tool, but we need social characterizations. So for our index, we have been using a widespread concept, which is the absurd. This concept is going to take us to the idea that the organization has the capacity to identify, reconvert, and absorb something on the basis of an external knowledge. But there are different skills. It is not the same to acquire a knowledge than to assimilate it. This requires different competences. So to identify knowledge or to have knowledge is just to see things, but then we have to assimilate those. We have to be able to interpret it. And this is something different. And also we have had a capacity that has been called realized capacity or knowledge, accomplished capacity. We need to have another capacity, another skill. We have to transform knowledge, the new knowledge we have acquired, on the basis of what we already know, because of course we always interpret things according to what we know in order to develop new services or products. But also we've got the knowledge exploration, which is to develop those knowledges and those skills. All these contexts, we find a great number of the dichotomy that lies on the fact that we have to know what is the problem, the cause, and then solve it. So this process is this one. We have got a social demand, and we have to interpret it. For example, the youth problem, could be a societal problem, or it could be the youth crime could be a societal problem, or it could be a different kind of problem. This interpretation is not only an interpretation of the knowledge, but also it is a political interpretation. On this model, it is a small screen, so you might not see all of it. But these social demands are interpreted by the organizations in function on the basis of their knowledges. So this is going to lead us to how we can solve this. To assimilate problems is to generate a certain number of prototypes or ideas in order to meet the needs of the community, and then we have to reinterpret it and we have to replicate it. So we are going to regulate the absorption capacity of these skills with the project in particular. So we've got here two new elements. It is the global sphere and the regional sphere. These social problems are mainly local, so the solution should be local, regionals. They are in a context, and they depend on the resources of a region, etc. It is not the same problem of unemployment that have Germany, Spain, or the Basque Country. It seems the same, but it's not the same. So, but there are many global solutions available for us. A certain number of problems, but to interpret it a global solution, to translate it and to interpret it, to adapt it to the local sphere, we need some knowledge. A great part of the industry of the Chinese software, they just buy the computers, they are copying these computers, and they're just producing new computers. It seems easy, but with no knowledge about what this technology, you cannot do that. So there is a great capacity of knowledge absorption to copy a technology or even to improve it. It is the same for the social issues. For example, solution tailor-made for Finland. If we do not want to apply it to a different environment, we have to have a translation program, because it could be a similar cause, but it is given within a context which is different. So we have to translate it from the global to the local, but it's only possible thanks to this absorption capacity. There are many other elements, but I'm not going to go deeper into them. This is the approach that we have used to measure social innovation. So we have developed the Resindex with this regional social innovation index, which was at the beginning a pilot project, and its aim is the following: to stick to the social context of the Basque Country, using this as a particular methodology, to try to apply this methodology to, for example, 100 companies, 94 organization, and 80 groups of research. And we wanted to know whether they were doing social innovations. In order to measure, we have to use a definition. We like it or not, we need to have a definition to have a certain number of indicators. Our definition of social innovation comes to the practical implementation of ideas in order to develop a new or improved products, processes, or methods that are going to articulate creatively knowledge and resources locally applied. We have also to develop a participation mechanism. The public should participate in the innovation project, and also in cooperation, because they have to cooperate with other bodies and organizations. These innovative projects are going to bring about a solution, or a better solution that we will use. And we have focused our study on 5 areas: employment, health, culture, environment, and social services and education. What is our this model? We have to identify the absorption capacity, this skill to interpret the cause and to assimilate it, and the realize absorption capacity and the implementation of that. And this is an innovation project that is going to respond to meet the social demand. We can have a company that has a project, for example, for a children's canteen in a school. This is closely linked to the social issue, but it is not innovative. It is social, but not innovative. We only have created an innovative element when we change the function and the end or the aim of this canteen. So our idea is to measure the capacities of the system to innovate and to see in what depth the program is going to implement social programs and projects. So these projects are here on the basis of this structure we have been describing. This is the access to social knowledge, what is occurring in the social sphere, the development of a social project, a methodology, etc. And also we have measured the impact of the process. We have measured in two times. We have detected three kinds of impacts. The sector where there is an impact, in the social sector where there is an impact, and also we have measured the impact we could call the delayed impact. So the impact we have on the organization when we are doing something. When someone does something, we learn something. So we have measured the impact on the organization. Have we noticed something different because of the implementation of a social program? And the governance, we have measured the governance on three levels. Commitment of the people, the community. How can we involve this community, or we can have a mechanism of transformation of this community? So we have measured the social governance. We have also measured the governance as a cooperation strategy with other partners. This is the horizontal governance, and also we have seen whether this project has created a group of new organizations that support this action. So the governance is all that. The way of participation of the community, and also the level of cooperation with other organizations, and what are the impacts of these measures. Are they going to give them a sustainable element? So we have done that for all kind of projects, or not only on social innovation. So we have created three indexes that are in your document. First of all, the Innovation Capacity Index. This reflects the potentiality of the organization to have this innovative capacity. It was defined by Europe as the European paradox. There is a lot of capacity, but this capacity or these skills are not applied to technology. The idea behind all that is the same. We've got a high potential capacity, but is it applied to the social sphere? So the orientation index towards the social is a measure that enables us to see if an organization is social or not, if it is socially oriented or not. What are the results? We've got potential absorption capacity to create innovation in these four types of organizations that are different. At the regional level, it is the capacity between 0 and 10. Into 0 and 30, we have a very low capacity. We have different, and with more than 71, high capacity. So we can see where we are standing. The capacity of the system is average. The socialization capacity is high, and the learning capacity is quite high. The learning capacity is the capacity that people have to learn about what they're doing. And socialization is if there are elements that are shared by the community in order to distribute idea. The development capacity is the capacity to do things, to do innovation. And the linking capacity is the capacity to share knowledge with other organizations. The socialization capacity and internal is to cooperate with your own body organization, or the external is with other organizations. So the potential absorption capacity of the system shows us that there is a learning capacity which is very high, and knowledge and linking quite high as well. But when we are talking about social orientation, we find that those capacity that enables us to carry out at social level these potentialities is quite low. In the NGOs, it is average, and in the other is quite high, the knowledge acquisition. But then to implement it, it's average. What is the central point? We could say many things about that, but I'm just going to address one. All the agents have a low governance. These people are going to have many projects, but with no relationship with the community. They are not acting and interactive. There is no interaction with this system. So we've got a knowledge capacity and a knowledge of the impact, which is quite it is average and has been developed. But what is lacking in the system is the governance. The system as a whole has got problems of governance, despite the fact it's going to be a non-profit organization or an NGO. This shows us the path we have to follow in innovation, social innovation. This social innovation is lower because if we compare it with the social orientation, it's because it is very difficult to develop new products, services to meet the needs in a sustainable way. So we've got a social innovation which is quite low. If we measure it from between 0 and 100, but as we can compare with other regions, so we do not know really if the system is high or low. It is quite low as such. And also we have, when we have the regional Resindex, we can see whether the companies have the social capacity, what is the absorption potential capacity, and the social orientation on the innovation. We can see that there is a high capacity to implement, which is average in the social, and we are talking about one thing. We have think about the fact that the social innovation is closely into technology and environment. So when we look at the, for example, the technological centers, and we see it is the absorption is high, we're not talking about schools, but we more talk about technological products that are used in the environmental sphere. So more information about these results are in the book. So what I wanted to talk about, and it is not in this book, in the handbook, it is what are the implications for the public policies. If we have zero capacity, what do we do with all this? With all that, we are going to try to increase the potential absorption capacity. So this model enables us to have a scaling up of these policies. So these are many policies, and we can increase the potential capacity of the environment. If we've got potential capacity, what can we do? If we do not have social orientation, or it is very low, we will have to raise consciousness of the community to achieve a higher degree of commitments. We have to be more innovative. The policies and the programs are going to be centered on innovation. And if we have all the ingredients, the policy proposal is to clusterize. We have to have clusters to have a systemic impact on the region. Therefore, the consequences for the public policies that we can identify for each one of the agents a specific strategy in order to orient ourselves to social innovation. And this is a quite flexible model, because we can implement a great number of policies that are based on more precise policies that are not depending on the system. For example, what happens with the calls, for example? When we have the calls of the European Unions, for example, when they call for project, what happens then? We've got the Matthews effect. So Matthew says the ones who are going to Matthew says the ones who are going to come to the heaven are going to be the more skilled, but the ones who have more papers and more projects are those who are going to have access to these calls. Those who are not qualified, they're not going to have these calls. So to have a general call for papers or for projects, the best ones are the ones who are going to be selected. And those who could do social innovation that are not the best, we then face a problem of resource allocations to impact at the systemic level. So our proposal is the following. We have to have different policies adapted to different environments and different capacities. So we have to know what happens with this capacity.
The model tries to explain that process. And I believe it's a debate on how to design public policies that has to do with the specific capacities of the agents. Now I would like to summarize all of this and not to bore you anymore. Social innovation does not have a stabilized approach which affects the development of indicators. The indicators are these translation tools from non-tangible to tangible for decision-making. And mainly they're used for the design of policies based on data. We know that policies are also based on lobbies, but when there's no data, what's most important is the lobby. Therefore, we need to have data in the system. To develop indicators in social innovation, it's necessary to change perspective. We do not need to just focus on those that are extraordinary. We need a systemic approach, and that's not the approach of believing that there's one organization that has the idea that we have an innovation that is scaled to another region. For us, and that's the vision of Europe, for us, the idea of systemic is much more related to agents in a local area or region to participate somehow according to their own skills and aims in social innovation process. That's what's systemic for us. Social problems, social needs and solutions make up an epistemic process of social governance. I don't understand, and this is part of the debate, why sometimes we think that we need knowledge to do technology, but not to do social innovation, just practice and good ideas. No. Our view is that we have social innovation based on knowledge as technological innovation. We need the knowledge only for technology and just action for social innovation. No. This is something that should also be debated. So we need knowledge, and we have technology, social sciences that don't do this but could do a lot of things related to this. So we need the knowledge, and the main point is that innovation is based on knowledge. And social innovation is no exception to this. Therefore, to study in knowledge, we need to look at skills. We're not talking about any type of knowledge. We're talking about different types of knowledge. We need to understand processes and to transfer that. knowledge. So we don't need the same skills to do all these different things, and we need to be very precise to interpret what are the skills of organizations to go through social innovation processes. How much time do I have left? The idea then is the notion of capacity absorption is good for these processes. And this concept is part of the literature and the debate of the academia, but hasn't been applied to social innovation. And therefore, this model is an innovation in itself. So when we interpret a social problem and we base this on knowledge, it is not enough with knowledge because, for example, the university does carry out studies on different subjects and generates papers and so on and so forth. But to carry out social innovation, you need to do this, but you also need to develop social skills. You need to cooperate and structure a governance system based on these actions. So you do not only need to know, you also need to do. And the proposal of this model is to identify the capacities or skills to know what we need to know and how to do it, and to measure how much is done according to what you know. I know this might seem difficult, but it's not so complex. So, having said this, that social innovation is based on an epistemic process of governance and participation and collaboration, we believe there's not one only agent involved. There's many, and we've identified 4, but there can be more. The model needs specific parameters to be able to measure for organizations, 27 indicators, one only definition. Without this, we are not able to measure. Can we improve the definition and the measurement? Yes, everything can be improved. But for a pilot project like the one we wanted to do with InnoBasque, we set out from one definition and one system, and we saw what the results were. So we understand that the model has this plurality of different agents, that we didn't have to measure social innovation, not only social innovation at least. We needed to take into account the potential for innovation, the social orientation, and the social innovation, because by only looking at this, this won't be useful for the scale of policies. We need to know the impact, and to do that, we are not only looking at social innovation, and that's our viewpoint. That's what we took into account of potentials, social orientation, and social innovation, and that's why we created these 3 different indexes to be able to measure these 3 things. So, according to this, the idea is to have a type of inverse engineering. What type of policies we need for this type of model? If we have a policy that is the already existing one with generic funding of project, then we won't get anywhere. But if we want to focus projects on skills, we need to develop a new model to be able to do this. That's why at the start of my talk, when I talked about synergies, I said how interesting it is for synergies not to be one academic product, but for it to allow agents to enhance and to make policymakers reflect. And to do this, we need to generate tools. If we don't do this, it will be very difficult to progress with the study of cases, successful stories or cases, because in this type of forums we don't talk about failure. Don't we assess failure? I've been in many forums on social innovation, and we always talk about the cases of success. We never talk about failure. So we also have case studies, but the idea of the model was to show a systematic approach, being able to measure the global impact and the system as a whole. So going on, what would be the next steps? Well, case studies. Why do we need case studies? Because when we identify social innovation in companies, universities, and technology centers, what we identified were projects, and these projects could be interesting cases. But when we analyze in a statistic manner based on indicators in a quantitative manner, we lose part of the qualitative information about the way in which the process runs, how one thing is linked to another, and how knowledge is interpreted. So we identified this potential. So how things were done in each specific case is something we don't have the know-how. We don't know about it. So we need to study how the model runs in real situations to measure in a quantitative and qualitative manner the different indicators. So we need this second way of having a follow-up of measurement. We need a systematic way of working to know if there's a progress or not, and to improve the way in which we gather data and we use these indicators. If in the Basque Country we measure something more than once, we are able to make this model better. But as this is contextual, it could be that we are systematically just measuring in the same context, and we need to use other contexts. There are other social problems, different ways of solving them, and Germany is not the same as Finland, and so on and so forth. Therefore, we need to have comparative studies amongst the different regions. What are we doing to achieve this? Well, we're talking with other colleagues and organizations in Latin America and in other European regions. The Latin American contexts are very interesting as enormous social innovation processes, and in fact, you can learn a lot about these processes in this context where the welfare state was never stable. So what's the situation there? If we look at the big statistics regarding entrepreneurship, from the Entrepreneurship Monitor, we see that India, Brazil, and Mexico are those countries that have a greater average of entrepreneurs than in European countries. Why? Because there's a need, there's hunger, and there's poverty. There's no other reason for that. So looking at the index in different areas is very relevant to make indicators stable. So that's all. Thank you.